ladies and gentlemen, to the 311 Griffin YouTube channel. It has been a while since I've done a real Guns of Red Dead video. They turned out not to be that good unless I could get a real-life copy of the actual gun to examine. So, a friend of mine, actually Warlock, who plays Red Dead with me, he bought a rolling block, partially because of the fun we were having in Red Dead, and partially because it's just a really cool gun, and so he has loaned it to me to discuss and to talk about. So this should be more interesting than the last one. Yeah, I think I did one on the carbine, but let's talk about this gun. So the rolling block was actually designed in 1864, produced from the mid 1860s up through the 19 teens. This particular model is a 1902 model that we think was, or my friend believes was created for the El Salvadorian military, and El Salvador, I believe, didn't pay their contract, and thus Remington sold these to the Department of the Interior. They sold them elsewhere. There are some other models. There are many chamberings, and many of the world's militaries use these guns, which was kind of common back then for guns of this nature. Militaries were trying to advance firearm design, and technology was advancing very rapidly, and different militaries around the world were trying to keep up. So this served in France, Egypt, I believe Denmark, places in South America. Sweden and Norway were a unified country at the time. They used it. The US used it. Great Britain used it. A lot of different countries used it. Not necessarily this model. There were different models and different chamberings. As far as calibers are concerned, this is the caliber that this one's chambered in. It's a 7mm Mauser, 7x57 if I remember correctly. It's a quite capable cartridge. There's the case. For comparison's sake, this is a 7.62x39, which is what the AK-47 and SKS and some guns like that fire. A little bit lower recoil, little bit wider bullet, but it's not quite as efficient, or doesn't fly as well, I guess, if you want to call it that way. Could be more efficient in other ways. Another comparison, this is a case. I don't have a loaded bullet or a loaded cartridge in here at the moment, but that's the case of a 300 Winchester Magnum, quite a bit bigger, but of course there's 308 and a lot of other 7mm and 6mm, 8mm cartridges that are in that range that are kind of closer to that. So that is the caliber, or the cartridge, that this gun uses. Let's talk about some of the general features. We've got a lot of the common features: sling mounting points front and back. You can see the one up towards the muzzle there, the one back here on the buttstock. We've got a lot of wood furniture on this. This is also common of guns of that era. We've got semi-buckhorn sights. I'm not going to be able to get a very good view of the sights themselves, but they're very, very crude. I'll try to get a picture of it. But a lot of military rifles, especially back then, have basically semi-buckhorn sights. So what you'll wind up having is a very tall blade up here, because you've got all of this furniture kind of in the way back here. And then you'll have some sort of a setup where you've got a bit of an adjustable sight there. So let's look a little closer at that. Okay, so this is adjustable. You can basically hinge this up and move. You can move this piece. The sight is right there. There's a little notch that you line up with the blade on the front, and you can essentially, this is marked. It's kind of hard to see, but there's some marks there with different ranges, and you can drop this down to get whatever range you want. So so this would cause, as it goes up, it would cause you to have to tilt the gun like this to get that notch lined up with the blade on the front, lined up with the target. And the higher up that is, the more you have to tilt it to get it lined up. So typically these things aren't that accurate at long range. I don't know that that was used much, but it was probably used some. Now we are going to talk briefly about, down here we've got our cleaning rod. This is threaded on the end, slides in this block. You can unthread it. This notch on the end was for cleaning patches and things like that. You can slide it out. You can see there it's threaded on the end. It goes down the barrel this way for cleaning. This also has a notch here. I don't have a bayonet to put on here, but and I don't know exactly how that bayonet would interface with it, but almost every military rifle of the time, and even some modern ones, have bayonet mounting lugs. And that's about what you'd call that. It would probably lock on this notch somehow with something that the soldier could interface with to remove the knife blade, or some of these had sword bayonets, and that probably depended on where they were going, where they were being sent. Okay, now we are going to talk about the locking mechanism and the trigger and all that. So basically we've got two semicircles here. One's the hammer, one's the block. This is a rolling block. So right now I can't pull the block back because the hammer's in the way. But if I pull the hammer back all the way, then this breech block can roll back, and inside here you can see the chamber, and there's an extractor right here that grips the cartridge. It's angled on the front, so when you push this forward it can spring out of the way. It's a little springy, and it'll spring out of the way, grab the rim of the case, and then when you pull this back it'll pull it out whether it's loaded or not. Now we're going to put an empty in there, so you can slide it up in there, close the block, and it is ready to fire. The trigger pull on this is pretty heavy, around 20 pounds we think. It maxed out the scale. And any such gun, any hammered gun, especially old ones, I shouldn't say any hammered gun, but old hammered guns, you basically have to put your finger on the hammer and then pull the trigger, and then you can let it down. There's an issue there, it's kind of catching. So I can drop this to half cock, which is a very common thing. That means it's not resting up against the firing pin. And you can see that right there, that actually, and there's the extraction, but that actually pushes a little nub through that hole right there. Nub, it's the firing pin. I shouldn't say nub, it's the actual firing pin. And then that hits the back of the case. You can see that one's dimpled. This one's not. This is live. When that gets dimpled, that's the primer, and that causes it to ignite the powder. So this one's been fired. Put it back in. Go to half cock. Then when you want to, you could carry it around like this. You'd want to carry it in a safe, pointed in a safe direction. Try to be as safe as possible. But when you're ready to fire, pull that back all the way, and then you could. It's giving me. I don't really want to snap it, even though I know that this is not a live cartridge. I don't really want to pull the trigger and make it go all the way. But it would rotate. It would fall and hit that. The hammer then holds the breech block in place, so when the cartridge fires, the bullet's traveling down the barrel. You've got chamber pressure in here pushing back, and it can't push back because the hammer is holding the breech block closed. Okay, I'm going into a lot of detail about this because I know some of my viewers are very familiar with guns and some are not, so I'm wanting to make sure that I explain how that works. But that's basically it. And you can't pull this back while this is all in place, so you would fire it, pop that back out, take your live cartridge, put it in there, close the breech block, pull the trigger. Aim, pull the trigger. That's basically how that fires. So let's check it again. Everything's all good. Oh, there. If I just don't think about it too much, I can make that fall the way it should if I were pulling the trigger to fire it. So that's how it would look. That's half cock. I think it was actually stopping a little bit further away. There's some, it's old, and I think there's some stuff going on in the mechanism that's causing it to have some issues. Either that, or I wonder, it might just be me. Anyway, so that's basically how that works. Now, it's a little bit different than a Sharps. These are very similar, and there's no Sharps in Red Dead, but the Sharps is a falling block. So you basically, instead of a rotating breech block, you have a falling block. There's a lever that pulls down the falling block, and then whenever you load it, you close the lever, the block goes back up, and the hammer is over on the side on those. And to my knowledge, I've never actually handled the Sharps, but to my knowledge, when you open them, there's no extractor, so the cartridge doesn't come out. You have to pull the cartridge out manually to load it. So this was a little bit quicker, a little bit more genius of a design, I think, in many ways. So, but it's definitely a cool gun, and it's a cool addition to Red Dead. Okay, let's take a look at this rolling block here. You can see the hammer and the block itself that rolls, just like on the real gun. Let's aim it, because this is the only way I can aim it without the scope. At the moment, you can't really see the sights very well, but they're pretty standard. And you can't see it very well, but basically he pulls the hammer back, pulls the block back, and reloads it. And that's all there is to it. It was pretty simple. That gun is pretty simple but sturdy design. It's pretty clever. So that's that. If you are new to Red Dead, this is your gun. Save up for this. Let's murder some folks. So with that, I hope that this gives you a little bit of insight into the world of real firearms, real military firearms, the way they were used in real life, the challenges involved in using them in real life, and how that relates to the game, and how accurate the game is, and gives you an appreciation for what we have in Red Dead. As always, thanks for watching. Take care.